The human race is one of both perfect chaos in form, evil and beauty, love and lust. Every human stakes their claims to different likes, dislikes, passions, but they all kind of fall into categories. Almost as if our minds are just templates that are slowly filled in to create the illusion of a unique mind. We all have a favorite food, a favorite color, heck, a preferred side of our face, for goodness gracious' sake. We all have memories of graduation, our first love, our last love, if you're dead. And within that vast sea of universal experiences rests the childhood nostalgia. Untouchable memories that are so deeply rooted in our hearts that nothing can touch them, at least without serious introspection. And for anybody below 50 years of age, I can almost guarantee there is a video game thrown in there somewhere. A game you remember being mesmerized by. It didn't need to be your most played, heck, even your most beloved, but just one that you found fascinating nonetheless. One that you don't revisit too often, that gets sweeter in retrospect with each passing year. Klonoa is apparently that to a lot of people, including me. So when remakes of the two mainline games got announced, I was both overjoyed to revisit those sweet memories, yet equally terrified by the notion that the glass may indeed be rose-tinted. Ever heard of Star Ocean? I know my friends have. Everyone has that certain thing that they really love, but you just can't quite pinpoint why. Something you're overtly passionate for, but when skeptics ask, this is more or less your response. I just really appreciate the idiosyncrasy. Consider this. Why do I like this? Well, why am I poor? As a kid, I absolutely loved Klonoa 2. I would replay those first few levels over and over, forgetting I owned the game and going back to play Kingdom Hearts. Did you know that my original idea for this channel was to chronicle my quest through every game I've ever played? You fool! Now, I planned to make this video like a year ago, and I died. That's it. But I'm still making this video way after the fact, because I feel like this franchise deserves a video breaking down what makes them so special. Because I wholeheartedly believe, with my heart of hearts, my Kingdom Hearts, my Tales of Hearts are, that this is undoubtedly one of the best platformer duologies ever made. They're refreshing, engaging, and inventive. They're an unbloated set of creative adventures that are proper palate cleansers for anyone who's sick of games being the biggest lifestyle changes you've made since your last divorce. Here's a quick history lesson. Come on over to Ham's History, hell. Klonoa Door to Phantomile was released in 1997 on the PlayStation 1, the idea being to create a platformer that would appeal both to kids and to adults. It's a very cutesy game, but it also has a very involved story, so I can definitely tell what they were going for. It was very well received critically, and it immediately grew a fan base due to its really strange, unique, dreamy vibe. In the end though, I think Capcom kind of expected a little bit more, maybe like a new mascot or something. Here's a little pro tip, guys. If you want a mascot, don't put a mascot on the mascot. In 2001, we got the direct follow-up, Klonoa 2 Lunatea's Veil on the PlayStation 2. It was a sequel in both story and gameplay, pulling Klonoa into a fully 3D but still kind of 2D world, I hope that makes sense. Lunatea's Veil was the obvious next step, and was very well received at launch. Despite releasing in 2001, many consider it to still be one of the best platformers ever made. And so, with two big, successful platformers under his belt, Klonoa died. Okay, that's not entirely fair. There were a bunch of non-numbered entries, but they were all handheld adventures, and the only one that wasn't was beach volleyball. So, think of that what you will. Now, that's not to discount their viability. From what I've heard, they're fun, competent adventures, but after 2002, there was radio silence. That is until 2008, when we got the remake of Door to Phantomile that, fun fact, killed you if you tried to buy it. That wasn't the line. I'm keeping that in. Now, more than 10 years after the fact, we get remakes of the two mainline games, and I was there at 12 o'clock, ready to make a video on it. I even had a script half written, and then I, died. That's all old history, though, I'm back, I'm better than ever. The voices haven't gone away, though.
Now to clear the air here, before this re-release, I had only ever played Klonoa 2, and I had never beaten it. Having known about both versions of the original title, and clearly seeing that this 2022 remaster was distinctly different, I assumed it was an entirely new standalone version made for this package. Boy was I a naive little degenerate. This is a Frankenstein's monster of a video game. It uses the Wii remake as a base, but completely overhauls the color palette, sent Klonoa into the dryer without reading his label, removed the voice acting and replaced it with the offensively low quality gibberish from the PS1 game, and then the LSD wore off and Bandai started working on a new Sword Art Online game. It's so strange to look at the PS1 original, look at the Wii version that didn't strike the right chord with fans, and then see what this remaster chose to pick from each version. I do prefer the new Klonoa design over the lanky remaster just because it's far closer to the original game. And from what I've heard, the Wii voice acting was abysmal, so whatever, the gibberish is fine. But knowing all of this, it does make the final product feel kinda strange. Thing is though, when I played through the game for the first time last year, I didn't know all this background info, and it still kind of felt like something was off. Certain aspects of the title feel uncanny because of the strange mix of character designs from the original and some that were kept but not significantly overhauled from the Wii version. The game, despite being overtly cutesy and lighthearted on the surface, kinda creeped me out, and I'm pretty sure that was the intent, and I absolutely loved it. Klonoa's adventure begins in a dream sequence as he remembers the time a big ring fell from the sky and finally gave him a friend. That best friend just happens to be a sentient bubble, Huepo. He then sees an aircraft crash into a near mountain. Waking up and immediately witnessing that same event take place, he goes to investigate. Upon reaching the top of the mountain, he's met by Joka, a loser. Alongside this ungodly creature, I find Gadius to be astoundingly creepy. And this is not helped by the low-quality gibberish voice lines that make him sound like he's speaking into a different dimension. They kidnap the plane crash victim, somebody known as the Diva Lafise, who they plan to capture in eternal sleep so her magical song can't restore light to the world. He is a rather evil little kiddo, I must say. I should put him on my wall. Klonoa is instructed by his grandpa to go see someone in the forest named Granny for guidance, and cue adventure. Now, what I just described there was 17% of the plot. Yeah, this game has 12 levels, not counting the final boss and post-game challenge. 3.5 hours? You gotta be joking! You gotta be joking! Door to Phantom Isle's length was a point of contention back when it initially released, and yes, this game is very short and definitely could have stood to be a little bit longer. However, when I compare Klonoa's contained length to pretty much any other platformer I've played, so only Mario and Kirby, I'd rather take Klonoa's shorter runtime because it ensures that every level is entirely unique and memorable. Throughout the story, you'll find yourself jumping from world to world, this time around known as visions, each one being broken up into 2 levels with the boss at the end. You know, they kind of look the same in a way. Your goals will differ from level to level. Sometimes you're simply getting from point A to point B. Maybe you're collecting 4 orbs to open a door, scaling a waterfall, and shooting down water spouts. Very rarely is a level gimmick reused outside of its context, and when they are, generally they're supplemental to a different new level gimmick, like water spouts returning as you're exploring the Mood Kingdom and slowly unlocking its sequence of doors. The point I'm making here is that I'd rather take 12 completely unique, polished, and deliberate levels over 40 levels that have virtually nothing to their name. I feel like that's a specific point where Klonoa shines. There's a level of deliberacy carried throughout the entire experience. Each level is entirely unique and essential, with all of them serving a purpose in furthering the story. It's interesting to note that the only level in Door to Phantom Isle without a cutscene is Vision 4-1, which is cool because it's a level with an underlying sense of urgency. You're already given your goal at the end of the previous level, so having that urgency presented through the atmosphere, the music, and the story structure is above and beyond what pretty much any cutesy platformer is gonna get you. And it feels like a super deliberate choice made. It's a very slight decision not to include a cutscene. After all, having a short scene right at the beginning with Huepo telling Klonoa, "There's no time, we gotta run," and Klonoa being all like, would have been like a 5-minute programming affair, and I wouldn't be here talking your penis off. But they decided to forego that in service to the tone, and it's for that reason the level sticks in my head. The gameplay itself carries a very similar design philosophy in that your tool set is fairly limited, but a lot can be done with it. Klonoa can jump, do a little floaty float, and shoot a beam out of his ring to commit the most heinous act of violence this side of identity fraud.
Wait a minute. You're not my son. You're a PNG!
You can also double jump off enemies to reach higher places, creating chances for some pretty clutch platforming moments and knee-jerk reactions to save a life here and there. You're also tasked with finding 6 lost Phantasmalians within each level, alongside finding all 150 of the gems, with 100 snagging you a life. Throughout each stage are 1 or 2 sections where you'll find this little fella, where for a limited time he will double the amount of gems each gem gets you, essentially functioning as a short speed and precision challenge, because doubling every gem the game expects you to is the only way to get all 150. It's a very deliberate challenge, one that feels intentionally difficult, entirely up to player skill and not, how many gems can you get for more lives? No, this is the dev team challenging you with a curated speed challenge fitting in difficulty to whatever point in the game you're currently working through. Enforcing a gem cap to every level also ensures that no singular stage can be stupidly abused for more lives, nor will any given level provide you with too many on a straightforward run. And considering that the easy mode removes lives altogether, those speed challenges and counting how many you've snagged in each level gives you a reason to actually get them in the first place. Going back to difficulty for uno momento, with a 12-stage runtime, there's a lot of room to mess up the difficulty with a sudden spike, but each level feels like a natural progression from the last 2 worlds being the most interesting in structure, and also your best chance to show off how well you can maneuver with your fairly limited toolset. Because realistically, all you can do is jump and throw enemies, which is why I believe that the devs chose to go down the 2.5D route for level design. None of this game strictly exists on a flat plane. You'll be twisting and turning, looping back around on yourself, going in and out of structures to scale them from different perspectives, throwing things towards and away from the screen. The level of actual interactivity you have with the world around you gives way to more creative uses for these simple mechanics instead of just jumping and throwing enemies left and right. Many of the bosses take advantage of the depth this 2.5D gameplay provides as well, with unique attacks and obstacles to keep track of. Each level and encounter provides something entirely unique. Maybe you'll be rushing through an ancient civilization, and then the next level you'll feel like you're in a freaking dungeon from an RPG. It keeps you on your toes, engaged for the whole runtime, which isn't really hard to begin with. This complements the story as well. With the setting and goal changing so often, the story can maintain a brisk pace and move from point to point with very little fluff in between. Since the game itself is short, obviously the story is short too, and I wish the game would have gone for maybe 1 or 2 more sets of levels so more time could have been spent within the world of Phantasmile to fully flesh out the background lore and Gadeus as a villain. He only shows up at the beginning and end of this game, with Joka, the loser, doing everything for him. What's here though is incredibly distinctive, which yeah, an engaged story from a level-to-level platformer is rare by itself. It's kind of like when a child asks you to play a board game and then whips out chess. It's impressive, but you still can't expect all that much. You're playing chess while I'm playing Chinese checkers, alright? And I know for a fact your ass don't speak Mandarin. But Door to Phantasmile doesn't use its genre as an excuse to skimp out on telling a meaningful story. While brief, the plot introduces a handful of characters, all of which contribute something to Klonoa's adventure. What I like most about the cast here is how they all come back around in the end and contribute to the final act in a totally different way. It kind of rewards Klonoa for being a good guy and helping all of them in more than just a it's what heroes do kind of satisfaction. The world of Phantasmile is made up of Klonoa's home, a huge dense forest, the Water Kingdom, the abandoned ruins of the Wind Kingdom, alongside the Sun and Moon Kingdoms flying far above in the sky. There isn't much in the way of world building for each individual culture, and I would have liked a world map that actually presented me the way they connect to each other, but at the very least, all of them carry this underlying sense of wonder. There's very much a dreamy vibe to this adventure, heavily otherworldly in a sense. The gibberish character speak is indeed complete nonsense, but there are actually recognizable nouns if you pay attention, so it does kind of feel like they're tangibly speaking to each other. Here's one of my favorite examples. The story reaches a pretty interesting climax where everything just goes to complete and utter fizzity yuck, and now you're exploring these huge mechanical kingdoms in hopes of catching up to Gadeus before he floods the world with nightmares. Despite very little screen time, Gadeus is an impactful villain solely off of the way the devs present him. Like I said earlier, his voice is horrifying, but it's also implied that he's actually just the mask? Now obviously I can't move on without addressing the massive elephant in the room. I'm not making that joke. The ending of Klonoa Door to Phantasmile is insane. You have a 3-round final fight, followed by what I consider to be one of the most violently unexpected twists in recent memory. I'm gonna go into that later on in the video though, so you're spoiler free for now. Long story short, the ending perfectly displays that Hideo Yoshizawa, the director of Klonoa, had a vision not just for a dreamlike story-driven adventure, but also for it to blossom into a franchise. The setup essentially allows for Klonoa to go anywhere and face any challenge you can think of. all bets are off. Klonoa's going to New York City in this summer's biggest movie event. Alongside the quality storytelling and ingenious setup for a series exists at its core an extremely fun and inventive game. So the obvious next step was to make a sequel. What path will they take this little freak down next? Well, walk with me, numbnuts. It's time to take a stroll into the world of Lunatea. I was, in a strange sense, scared to replay Klonoa 2. My memories of this game, while realistically only scratching the surface of what it has to offer, are pure, childlike fascination. If for whatever reason I happened to have that love shattered by a disappointing adventure, I was gonna do this with my pillow! Woo! This collection was my first exposure to Klonoa Door to Phantomile. I don't even think I had watched YouTube videos on it, so like, it wasn't going to disappoint any sort of grand expectation if I happened to dislike it. And while yeah, I really enjoyed both of my playthroughs through that game, that doesn't automatically ensure that I'll enjoy its sequel, let alone match my high expectations. So, after my first playthrough, how do I feel? Well, let me put it in the form of a metaphor. Klonoa Door to Phantomile is a flower in early spring. While beautiful in its own living, breathing way, it's an introduction to the series. It's a flower yet to reach full bloom. Klonoa 2 Lunatea's Veil is the best platformer I have ever played. Lunatea's Veil is exactly what a sequel should be. It more or less one-ups the original in every way, with tighter level design, more bombastic and creative level themes, and new interesting platforming maneuvers that all still tie back into the same solid core mechanics. The story is consistent with the original in tone, however bumps up the travel gang to 3, giving each member much more to do. The villain this time around, known as Leorina, is far more present in the story, with both her and her underling Tat, a winner, trading off conflicts from world to world. Though I'm already tired of spouting off successes and bullet points, let's take a step back and analyze exactly how this game succeeds as a standalone title and as a sequel. So not much in regards to the gameplay has changed. The physics are ever so slightly different. Oh no, they changed my boy's jump arc! I can't handle this! There are a few new ideas that this game has up its sleeve though. There are these electric enemies you can snag to get a super jump and blast your head through breakable blocks. Near the end of the game, this is used in a really interesting way to save one of the Lunateans. Oh, that actually sounds right. Where you have to backtrack a little while to get another enemy to get the perfect angle for this jump. This did stump me for a bit, I gotta say. Being a tree was chill though. In every level, there are 6 pieces of a memory doll to find, getting all of them rewarding you with some promotional art. Getting all of them in 6 levels, or 7 in the original, unlocks a bonus stage, and finding all of them in the game rewards you with, a scary bonus stage. And this is all once again alongside collecting 150 gems. Now there is a slight bit of leniency here, evident by how in some levels I got more than 150, though I think that was more just me being unfathomable. In comparison to its predecessor, the game ups its difficulty a lot quicker and begins to display its interesting level gimmicks as early as the second world. Couple this with the longer runtime, and a lot more ends up being asked of you when it comes to the precision platforming. There are also quite a few genuinely interesting puzzles, many involving this little dude in particular. When you throw him into enemies, he changes color, match that color to the obstacle block in your path, and what results are some pretty cool levels that made me stop and think about my surroundings. The entirety of the Maze of Memories was just about one of the coolest things in any game I can think of. The way it used its space, recontextualizing obstacles to make you move from room to room, slowly piecing together the way to progress. Once again, it felt like a freaking Zelda dungeon. Many of the levels have revisits this time around that change up the areas you previously explored, and normally I wouldn't be a huge fan of this, but the levels they chose to revisit were generally the ones simplest in design, meaning there was a lot of room to build upon the foundation. Adding a new gimmick like poisonous air, a huge killer robot, getting killed when you're in total darkness, it allows the story to revisit places without gameplay feeling redundant. I thought it was neat how the beginning of the game allows you to choose which level in an area to tackle first. This gave the scenario writing a few chances to insert a bit of non-linearity and play with the expectations of the player, alongside allowing those without proper skills or experience to temporarily put off a level that's giving them a headache. The biggest new inclusion here are the 4 hoverboard levels, putting Klonoa into a temporarily fully 3D environment, and these are they're neat, I guess. They're a nice change of pace, and the last level in particular was a lot of fun. This kind of feels like the devs trying to make Klonoa cooler by giving him a skateboard, which is something that always works, and I won't hear anything about that. Okay, this is getting out of hand. I feel like the hitboxes, the gems, could have been resized a bit here though. Nabbing them feels a little bit janky. And this makes sense considering that's normally a task designed to be done in 2D. It's a minor problem, but I thought I'd mention it anyway. There is a small section of the second board level that is actually the worst thing ever because it's virtually impossible to make out the gems from the course itself. This was the only level where I straight up gave up trying to get a good gem score. On the bright side though, it does have the best backing song ever, so it is automatically S tier. Near the end of the game, there are 2 board levels that are used to take you through some seriously interesting set pieces and also up the tension of the situation, and I really like both of those. Even with their inclusion, there are more standard platforming levels than in the original game, so it's an entirely unintrusive inclusion at worst, and at best, they're gonna save the world. The reason you have that hoverboard in the first place is because Popka, this little bunny, dog, cat, gem-eyed freak, stole it. One thing I wasn't too huge a fan of in the original was Hupo, because he doesn't really have much of a personality. The cast of Lunatea's Veil is a lot more colorful and engaged in the plot. Our good old dream traveler Klonoa is visibly aged up, and that's also represented through a sliver of angst and a big heap and help of confidence. He gets called a perv at one point in this game, and later on they say damn, so this is a game for adults now. Alongside Klonoa, we have the aforementioned Popka, who realistically doesn't do too much other than steal and motivate Lolo, who is kind of the center of the story. But let's shuffle back here a stepper 5. Underlings! Fall in line. If you behave, maybe we'll get Happy Meals on the way home. On a violent, stormy night, Klonoa finds himself adrift in the ocean, a lonesome voice calling out to him. He wakes up to see Popka and Lolo standing over him, having saved him from the waves. They call him the Dream Traveler and request his help in reaching an island across the stretch of the ocean. Unsure of what exactly is going on, Klonoa agrees to help as Lolo disappears into its big ring, giving it the ability to shoot wind blasts. Upon reaching the island, they strike the bell at the base of the towering statue. Lolo is a Hupo-adjacent character, however she's given much more to do. See, Lolo is a priestess in training, a priestess's job being to strike the bells of joy, indecision, tranquility, and discord that are scattered throughout the world's kingdoms. With the threat of a 5th kingdom and by proxy a 5th bell appearing and thrusting Lunatea into chaos, Klonoa accompanies Popka and Lolo on their quest to ring every bell and save the world. Lolo is adorable, and I love her, and I should put her on my wall. Klonoa is a great character, and I'll get more into that in a bit. But Lolo gets the most attention when it comes to character development, and while once again this game is short, so development happens fast and in a concise manner, the dynamic between the 3 heroes works really well in establishing her arc. Lolo wants to be a hero, but seeing Klonoa's unwavering bravery in the face of danger begins to instill feelings of doubt over her validity as one. So often in life is it easy to doubt yourself as a result of someone else's triumph, to see someone you look up to and immediately assume that you can never match them. And in Lolo's case, her doubt is kind of valid. Klonoa is doing most of what's getting done, and she was only able to reach proper priesthood with his help. Though that isn't to say she isn't playing her part. One can't succeed without the other. At the peak of her arc, you actually temporarily lose access to your wind ring because she's lost her confidence to fight, showing that even Klonoa can't go it alone. They need each other to succeed. This is when Popka pulls through and motivates Lolo as her best friend. I like how all 3 of them are consistently given something to do. This goes for Leorina and Tat as well. While the cast isn't any larger than Klonoa 1, it might actually be smaller. I'm not gonna do the math though. Everyone is given more to do, and I really like the way the dynamics play out, simple as they are. This is also the best chance to mention something present in both games, but I feel is really prevalent here. There doesn't seem to be many consistent design philosophies behind the characters. There are a handful of races in the world of Lunatea, and they all look so extremely different from one another. You got Klonoa, who looks different because he doesn't come from Lunatea in the first place, but you got these little blob freaks from Funtime Carnival World Experience, these lanky weirdos from the Maze of Memories, Lolo and the residents of Lalakusha are all monkey people. I don't even know what Popka is. Satan. There's this strange disconnect between all of the character designs, and I think that was intentional. The world of Lunatea is a broken, separated world, where each kingdom mostly stays to themselves and lives their own bizarre way of life. I think the designs were also done this way to complement the dreamy, otherworldly nature of these games, just another layer of complexity to make these worlds feel different than ours. Speaking of Lunatea itself, I find the world of Klonoa 2 to be a vast improvement over the original. First off, it's easier to understand the lay of the land because of the more traditional world map. map. It even goes through changes as the story progresses, which caught me off guard and scared me back into my room for the 10th day straight. The actual kingdoms you explore are way more creative and off the wall. There's La Kusha, which is the feel-good sunny mountain town. The aforementioned Funtime Carnival World experience, which like an amusement park is only open sometimes, which... Why is everyone here trying to kill me? Or are these just the park goers? Are we the bad guys? The DreamWorks animated movie? Available on Blu-ray right now? You got the isolated kingdom of Volk, which is in a constant state of civil war, the snow-covered world of Mira Mira, and the secret spooky fifth kingdom, which was a great final act. Each of these kingdoms holds a bell tied to an ideal, which is also displayed through the state of their people. There's tranquility, joy, discord, and indecision. Now, I would be hard-pressed to create a world based around the concept of indecision, but boy, did they ever. It's a shame they didn't have a kingdom of straight up thug in it, because that could have delivered. Feel me, chief? Someone translate that in the chat real quick. Having levels based on ideals is so much more interesting than water, wind. Don't get me wrong, I like the 4 crystals, but I don't always want vanilla ice cream either. To supplement the incredibly interesting places you travel to is a top-tier soundtrack. Klonoa 1 has a good soundtrack, right? But the theme that plays as you're playing through the roads of Lala Kusha or the depths of the Mira Mira maze, we don't even talk about the art, okay? We don't even talk about it. We don't even talk. Every track effortlessly sells the dreamy, otherworldly vibe, but with an underlying sense of hope. There's this leitmotif that plays through many levels, including the last, that anytime you hear it, just uplifts your spirit ever so slightly, reminding us that even in the most broken parts of the world, there's hope. Heck, even the ending of the game itself hammers that theme home. I'm learning life lessons from the teenage angsty rabbit boy. This game is easily in my top 10 games, and it's never leaving. Everything I wanted this game to be as a child, it is, and when it subverted my expectations, it ended up being better. You should subscribe because my content tends to be very positive like this, except for when it's not. And if you like Jump Force, I got nothing for you. Oh, hallowed be thy name. So after all is said and donezo, the Klonoa Phantasy Reverie series offers a great reimagined PS1 classic that is a beautiful textbook example on how to introduce and execute a concept that can build into a series, alongside its direct sequel that builds upon everything in the obvious ways, delivering what is easily my favorite platformer that I've played to date. And this is why it absolutely kills me that we never got a proper continuation to the series. One was indeed planned in the late 2000s, but Klonoa got tall and just sold so many copies. Someday I plan on finding the best way to play those GBA games and just sink into my couch, basking in the warm glow of Rabbit Boy. But unless a massive Klonoa fan makes his way into corporate and starts calling the shots, a Klonoa 3, you know, maybe I just have to be that person. But even though I would salivate at the thought of a third mainline entry, I'm content with what we have. Because when you look at them as a duology, as 2 pieces to a larger story, I don't think they could have written plots that better supplement each other. Klonoa 1 is a fairly bright game, right up until the end when they reveal who Klonoa truly is. Turns out he isn't from the world of Phantom Isle. Hupo summoned him to help combat the coming darkness. Klonoa is in fact a dream traveler, someone who jumps from universe to universe, saving them as needed. Klonoa gets sucked back through the portal he arrived from, now knowing that all of his childhood memories were fabricated. Now this is batshit insane for a children's game. Hell, it took me off guard, and I have a child. His name is Funkalo. We can't forget about the other one. But damn. My man Klonoa off the dimensions and shit. On my second playthrough, I did actually catch some of the foreshadowing that leads up to this. His grandpa mentioning that boy from another world, and for an unexplained reason, Gagius is targeting him because his dreams don't belong. But the easy explanation would have been that his dreams are pure, and that he's the chosen one, but nah. They had to go and make me cry. The ending scene is so sad because it ends with no emotional resolution and really no chance for one. But what we learn about Klonoa as a character is extremely valuable because it paints a picture as to what the series could be moving forward. Anything. They can take this character anywhere they want, give him any number of wacky companions, and then just wipe the slate clean, no strings attached. Keeping every game loosely connected, but also entirely standalone for the sake of approachability. Think of the Kirby series, for example. Each game technically takes place in a continuity, I think, but it doesn't matter, right? It's always gonna be Kirby doing Kirby things. Toss a flair onto the aesthetic, give him a new partner, Go. In Klonoa's case, just make a new story, make a Hupo adjacent bubble to bounce around, and change Klonoa's hat. Toss him into a brand new dreamy world, rinse repeat, you got a winning formula. And while they did indeed do that, these games complement each other in a much deeper way, and it more has to do with the ways Klonoa 2 acknowledges his predecessor, or really lack thereof. First off, no characters return from the original title other than the big boy himself. So what we're given instead are characters that fit similar purposes but have stronger personalities to highlight more of Klonoa's character traits. Lunatea's Veil takes place an undefined amount of time after the first, but it's clear he's older and far more capable as a hero. Who knows how many worlds he's saved in the meantime? What we do know, though, is that upon reaching Lunatea, he takes no time in making the choice to help save it. Klonoa is just about the perfect hero for a long-running franchise, because his motives are always going to be entirely selfless. In both games, he spends the adventure saving a world that isn't his own, and in Lunatea's Veil, knowing full well he's gonna have to leave when he's done, because that's just who he is. He's the Dream Traveler. They save worlds that aren't their own. In many ways, it would be a thankless job, one where you don't get to experience or even necessarily see the fruits of your labor. Popka claims at one point that Klonoa fights for a world that isn't his own because he's a stubborn, heroic fool who doesn't know any better. That isn't the whole picture though, and you'd only know that if you played the first game. And going back to revisit the first game after playing Lunatea's Veil highlights how cool it is that we get to see a younger, less experienced Klonoa in the role of the hero. In this case, dealing with a unique situation with fabricated memories and losing the ones that he's made. For the longest time, I was confused about the beginning of Klonoa 2, where he just shows up, everyone's calling him the Dream Traveler, and then they go about their merry adventure. I always assumed that hidden somewhere in the back half of the game would be an explanation for why he was there in Lunatea, but no. If you'd played the first, you'd simply understand what's going on from minute one. There's really no explanation necessary. To see Klonoa's struggles as a child, and then to see what his character has grown into over the course of his adventures is a really satisfying arc. And that's why even if a third mainline game never happens, this series can truly exist as a closed book, one with a satisfying beginning and end, yet one that can be reopened at any time for a new chapter to be written. Now personally, I think the next step is obvious. First, change Klonoa's hat to green. Next, learn how to program, found my own dev studio. Withhold pay for my workers, and then start a drug lab. We're gonna be using the dev studio as a front, because all the money is gonna be embezzled into a car wash, and then bam, Klonoa 3. Cry of New Mexico.